Welcome to the Finance Friends podcast. Whether you have followed us from the beginning or you're a new listener, we are excited to have you here. Finance Friends gives our listeners a seat at the table with successful finance industry leaders. Follow us on our socials at Finance Friends Podcast, linked in the description box of this episode, and stay tuned for weekly episode releases. Today's episode, we're joined by Stefan Galbo, a good friend of mine. We first met playing footy as 13-year-olds, I believe. And now he's a corporate finance partner at PKF. I think he joined as a partner. He got promoted to a partner at the age of about 35, which is pretty impressive as they are one of the leading mid-tier accounting firms globally. Stefan has built a wealth of experience in gaining valuable insights that he's eager to share with all of us today. Known for his passion for fostering strong professional relationships and driving business value, Stefan blends technical expertise with a people-first approach to corporate finance. Stefan shares his early working experience at a Greek restaurant, where he had to learn the Greek language as a teenager and how that's helped him to forge a successful career in corporate finance. I'm really excited to share his story today. Hello, Stefan Galbo. Welcome to Finance Friends with Fabian. How are you today?
Very good. Thanks for having me on board.
Well, thanks for coming in. Just returned back from a week-long trip in South Korea, you mentioned?
Yeah, Seoul. Got back on Sunday morning. Really cool city. Got to do it again. Didn't get a chance to see too much, obviously, there with on business for a conference. But yeah, it's eye-opening when you go to these Asian cities and see how big their population is. And you just realise how small sometimes we are here down in Australia.
Yeah, that's true. And so you're away for a conference. So maybe let's talk about your work. So what do you do? What's your job? And give me a bit of a 30-second spiel about what your current profession is.
Sure. Obviously, I work at PKF, so one of the large mid-tier accounting firms, which is great, total solution to any sort of business, high net worth individual through your core accounting services, through your core compliance services. I'm one of the partners in corporate finance. A lot of people always say, well, what's corporate finance? Are you funding businesses? I think the definition of corporate finance does chop and change a lot. So sometimes I revert back and say, I'm a corporate advisor. So really trying to provide a total solution to a growing mid-market client looking to grow through that whole life cycle. So how do you grow a business? How do you value a business? How do you then divest a business? So all that whole M&A life cycle, the M&A transaction through to the valuation advisory work. And I think that's the key thing, like a lot of people miss. It's when growing businesses, it's not about growing revenue. It's about how are you growing value, that maximizing value concept.
Yeah.
I think that's where that valuation advisory work is so important. And then obviously to the tail end of, how do you realize value through a divestment, so selling businesses, divesting businesses.
Yeah, because there's obviously the two main ways is well, I guess you could have a partner buyout or a trade sale or even an IPO listing on the market. So do you give guidance on all those three potential exit strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, succession's a big thing right now. I think especially in Australia, so many family businesses that have that next generation is not taking over businesses anymore. And for whatever reason, so sitting back with the owners of businesses now, I'm really thinking, so what is our succession plan? Are we bringing in a private equity, a private capital solution provider?
Yep.
Are we looking at a trade sale? Who is the bidder market for it? A potential trade sale, and then obviously you got the IPO. We look at all that across that initial phase of advising a client, and really it's about maximizing value, but it's also about finding the right exit strategy for a client. So an IPO, is that really a great exit strategy for a client who doesn't want to continue operating a business?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because we've seen in the AFR and the press recently around founder-led businesses, and there's a couple of listed companies that are founder-led that they've the executive or the CEO has been pushed out because of maybe doing the wrong thing by the company. But those founder-led businesses tend to perform really well. And there's definitely a correlation between performance and founder-led businesses. But what does your typical day look like? because maybe I'd imagine, as people say, no day's the same, but it's quite, maybe just share some insight as to your typical day.
Sure. Well, I go to bed the night before and I look at my calendar and think, great, my day's set up, and it never pans out that way. With young kids, you got to find time for yourself in the corporate world, otherwise you just get burnt out. So really, I'm up anywhere between 5 to 5:30 in the morning. I've got certain days where I swim, certain days where I run, certain days where I ride, and then it's kind of online by 7:30, 8 o'clock, whether it's in the office, you're on the road, on phone calls. So, and then the day pans out. There's a calendar that you follow. It's a bit of a Bible. You try to stick to those meetings. You need a bit of flexibility to actually get work done as well, make phone calls, return phone calls. And then pretty quickly the day turns into 5, 6 o'clock, where the wife's messaging and calling and say the kids are waiting for dinner when you're coming home. So it's trying to get home at a reasonable time to spend some time with the kids before they're in bed, jump back online for a couple of hours, and before I get to bed, just read a book for an hour or so, and then unwind, and then it all starts again the next day.
And it all starts again the next day, that's right. What do you most enjoy about your role?
I think it's that whole. I'm a bit of an unstructured person, so I love the fact that yes, there's a calendar and there's people who've got meetings and there's certain things, but it's also what's going to happen in the day. It's such an unknown.
Yeah.
Is a new prospective client going to call and there's a new transaction on? Is an old transaction? Is a challenges along the way where you got to put everything aside and really try to find a solution to all these challenges? Is a deal going to fall over? Is just that whole the unknown. But
Yeah.
I think also the volatility of the unknown too. I love that whole not knowing concept and having to think straight away like what's going to happen.
Yeah. No, that's good. Tell us about what did you study and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so someone actually asked me this the other day, and I thought back and I said, why did I want to study accounting finance? And I think when I was younger, I just remembered I just wanted to wear a suit. I wanted to grow up and I wanted to have a career where I wore a suit and I worked in the city.
Yeah.
And I think I clocked that during uni when I got my first co-op role, actually for a fund research house.
Yep.
So I think you go through school studying subjects that you have a passion for, and then you kind of follow that pathway through to uni. Like no one at school actually says, okay, you're studying these subjects. This is your career pathway. You kind of need to learn along the way and meet people along the way and ask the right questions. I think that's how I studied accounting, which was a great course because it gave you that just that broadness across what does a corporate client really need. And then the GFC hit when I was midway through uni. So obviously job options became pretty finite. There wasn't too many options. At the time, I'd met someone who introduced me to this fund research house, Zenith Investment Partners, for those of you who know in finance. Had a great opportunity with them, worked for them for a year while still studying, and then you go through a co-op year. I started at RMIT, but the GFC hit, so it was, what are the options in terms of having a accounting degree? It's either insolvency or audit at the time. So I dipped my toe in insolvency, and the bad world of insolvency just taught me so much. The first thing it really taught me is how to deal with people.
Yeah.
You're just dealing with a lot of irrational people, and you're dealing with people that you have to make decisions quickly.
Yeah.
So I kind of followed that pathway. By that stage, I was really in my early 20s still, so you don't really know too much, right? In your early 20s, it's more about, what are my mates doing, and I want to hang out with my mates. You don't really have the hat of thinking about where's my career direction. And then I was always into reading books, and I just started picking up a few finance books, a few books about stock market. My time at Zenith, kind of you deal with a lot of fund managers, so you start to learn about the markets. And I just started following the markets. I think I bought my first stock when I was when I was probably about 19 years old through a mate of mine, a good mate of mine who had a similar role at a stockbroking firm. And he goes, let's buy this stock. And, I think I put 2 months worth of wages into this stock at the time.
Yeah.
Iluka Resources, I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention who my good friend is that bought the stock.
No, but they were flying back then, because I remember
were.
when I was at uni, I looked into Iluka too, and I tipped some money into it too.
There you go. I've never looked at the stock since, but anyway, I think I divested. So it's interesting. Then you start to you dip your toe into something and you start to learn and get an interest in something. So then I started picking up books. There was a great book I read called Bulls, Bears and a Croupier. If you've ever read it, fantastic book. Became friends with the croupier. I sort of reached out to him as a local guy. And then you start picking up more sophisticated books by, more market books written out of the US. Peter Lynch has a fantastic book.
One Up on Wall Street.
One Up on Wall Street, fantastic. I think I've read it about
book.
3 times.
Yeah.
And every time I read it, I make new notes in it. So then it just went from there. I got into valuation type work, and then here I am in corporate finance. I met the guys at PKF. They wanted to start up a corporate finance division. Thought this is my chance. Let's use that valuation skill set and apply it to a much broader market offering.
Yeah, and what do you think the number one or the key skills are to be successful in your current job?
I think the principles of most corporate jobs have never changed over the last 2 decades, and that is dealing with people. You need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to have a network. And I think the best job I actually ever had was working in a Greek tavern when I was a kid in uni. No, I was still in high school. In high school, studying VC, playing football, trying to go out and working this job, and it was so good because one, you're kind of dealing in a foreign language. You're communicating in a foreign language, but the world of hospitality, and for those of you who've never really had the pleasure of having to serve Europeans in the hospitality environment, it's very demanding. So I think that job taught me a lot of things in terms of how to deal with people, but also not being afraid that people are just people with different titles. So when you find that commonality with someone, you just open the discussion up. And I've always used that philosophy. Doesn't matter what meeting or what networking event or what function I go to. And even now, I look forward to most going to functions where I don't know anyone because I'm going to meet someone new.
Yeah, opportunity to meet someone new. And it's good to have that mindset because a lot of people that go to events, they're a bit reluctant to go to events because they might not know anyone there. But it's good to meet. And one thing you said to me a few years ago was you've built your network by reaching out to people and offering to buy them a coffee and getting to know them and understanding who they are and what they do and how they got to where they are today. And ultimately, this is the whole concept of Finance Friends with Fabian is giving people an opportunity to sit at the table and learn from, successful professionals like yourself about how you got to where you are today and what you do. So what would be your biggest advice for someone that maybe wants to work in corporate finance one day in their career and hopefully become a partner at a global mid-tier accounting firm?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is having that ability to communicate with people and network with people. So I think that's always the top of my list. And a lot of a lot of people, a lot of people that I catch up with and people that reach out to me just for some advice, that's always the top of my list because you can't teach that skill set. And then obviously the technical skill set you need, but I think that can be gained so much through reading. And the beauty about, the opportunities with just reading the amount of investor presentations I read still, it's sitting down, printing out investor presentation, understanding a market, or just thinking about how is a business articulating themselves to the market. Yeah. So there's so much, there's just so much value you can get from reading. And I think these days, a lot of people want the simple solution, and obviously the tech enablement of running businesses these days. And no doubt that changes how you still work. But going back to dealing with people, that face-to-face personal relationship, and doing the hard work and actually reading to understand yourself, I think they're the two number one for me. The two number one learnings that I would advise anyone to focus on.
Yeah, communication, building a network, getting to know people and be willing to put yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's important. And Susie, I wonder where that comes from. Is that something that you've gained over your journey, over your career, or is it something that was embedded in you from a? Because I remember you when we played footy together, you were pretty shy kind of guy, but you've grown and you've become super confident now, and obviously super successful. So, is that something that you've learnt along your journey?
Yeah, I think it's funny you say shy because maybe some people think the other way, but I think you're right. Like at the time when you're younger and dealing with older people is much harder.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's so much easier. So I think somewhere along the way, something changed, and maybe it was moving into that workforce when you're such a young age, and just having to then deal with people. And I think that definitely helped. So, and I don't know what younger people do these days. Do they still, do they have the pressure of studying and work, or do they not do that? Like, I think that's also a key thing. It's not trying to do too much, but making sure you got that balance where you are working, you have some sort of social life, you play a sport or do some sort of team event, and you're focused on studying, because it gives you that organizational structure.
Yeah.
But it gives you that benefit of communicating with people.
Yeah. So combination of having to prioritize, managing, multiple things at once, as well as you said, working and dealing with people. And I think that early on in your career that you could actually work and be accountable and start dealing with people, the better you'll be longer term. Like I've always worked from the age of 14, 9 months when I could.
Back at Coles, we were both at Coles together.
Yeah, we were Coles for a period of time, and I've worked in hospitality. I really enjoyed working in hospitality. I love dealing with people. I worked at a retail shop in sales, and I think that's really important. And when I see people now, when I meet with junior people that have finished university and still have never had any work experience, I ask the question, well, what have you been doing?
Yeah.
Like, how can you not work? What do you do with all your spare time? So it's quite interesting. So a bit of advice from me, I would say is, if you can get a part-time job, even when you're at high school, I highly encourage you to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true, because even a lot of the resumes that and CVs that come across my desk, it's especially with younger people, it's okay. You're not going to have that real technical experience, but what have you done? Like, what does it say about you as a person? What have you been doing with your time? So it's definitely important. You just, all those soft skills you learn, you can't teach a soft skill.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's learnt over time in different environments.
But you have to put yourself in those hard positions. You have to put yourself in the Greek restaurant and having to speak Greek. You have to put yourself in these uncomfortable situations to deal. And a good story, actually. I think one thing that I always think about that changed me when I was young, I had the opportunity to, I was working for some other time, and he said, I can't go to this event. It's full of lawyers and barristers. Go along. And I think I was trying to psych myself out not going on, but I rolled up to the law firm, and it was full of barristers and lawyers. And I just thought to myself, no one's going to want to talk to some guy that's 22 years old. You're dealing with barristers and the top of the legal profession. And I thought, how am I going to approach this? And in my head, it was, there's someone else who's going to be there that doesn't know anyone. So you walk into a room, you look for someone else that's on their own, or there's two people in a conversation, because it's much easier to enter a two-person conversation than it is to stand there and sweat it out that no one's going to talk to you. So I think that learning, I actually still apply that today. I went to a function a couple of weeks ago when they had the defence conference out. A UK client invited me along, and I didn't know anyone because it's not really my profession. And I rolled in, and there was someone sitting there on his own, and had a great conversation with him, and then you get introduced to the next person. It just rolls in like that. Yeah,
exactly right. And I think it's easy to spot that, that person that is on their own and go and introduce yourself, and then they have a lot of respect for you because they know they're in a situation where, they feel maybe a little bit uncomfortable. And if you've made an effort to go and say hello to them and get to know them, then it makes them feel more comfortable, and they have a lot more respect for you as a result. Yeah, I learnt when I finished my undergraduate degree, I just took a backpack and went traveling through South America and Europe. And I said to my mum, Mum, I'm not taking my phone. I'll call you. Don't worry about me. I'll call you every 3 or 4 days. But my late cousin was a mentor to me, and he said, just go and just explore, and just go to a backpackers, and, just go and say hi to people and get to know people and put yourself out there. And, if they don't want to talk to you, they're not right for you anyway. Who cares? Move on to the next person. Which was great. And tell us maybe a little bit, you mentioned let's go a bit on a personal level. So you're into cycling, you're into running, you're into swimming, obviously you keep fit, you got 2 young kids. What else do you do in your spare time, if you have any spare time?
The morning's my spare time, so if I'm not up early, unfortunately I miss out on some of my own time. And then obviously working hours where the kids are in bed relatively So the time you get home, you try to spend a bit of time with them, whether it's read them a book or do a puzzle together or just have a chat to them. They're kind of at that age now. You can just talk to them about their day. So I kind of really push the kids to let's read a book together, let's do a puzzle together, just to get them into something a little bit different rather than just sitting and watching TV or something. So that's typically Monday to Friday. But Saturdays I love to get out with the kids. So again, Saturday mornings I'm up early, same as Sunday mornings to ride or run, and then you're home, spend time with the kids. So it can be anything from going for a scooter, going for a bike ride, going down to the cafe, going out to a park. The kids sometimes will pick certain parks they'll go to and we'll go there.
Yeah.
Love spending time outside with the kids. Obviously, probably doesn't surprise you, but got a big backyard. So, whether it's mowing the lawns and the kids are running around, playing soccer, putting the other day we'll put in the tomato stakes in because it's tomato season, so getting the tomatoes going and
bit of gardening.
Just bit of gardening with the kids. Let them running around
And how important is that for you to have that balance in life where you get to spend time with your kids and time outdoors?
Yeah, I think as you progress through the stages of life, your responsibilities change. I think once you have kids, it really changes your responsibility. You don't have a responsibility just to yourself or to your partner anymore. There's these little people that you need to raise, and you need to impart whatever wisdom you can, or really the learning. So I don't want to be the type of person that comes in, and sometimes I am, that you walk in the house and you're on the phone.
Yeah.
You're on a phone call because you're trying to finish phone calls from the day.
Yeah.
And so it's being mindful of those things and just putting the laptop down, putting the phone aside, and just being outside with the kids. And I love it on the weekends. And we do barbecues and the kids are running around and.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important because it can be easy when you're a professional that works hard and really committed to your work to also to lose sight of what else is important in life. But it's great that you're able to do that and have time with your kids and take them to the park, and I think that's really important. And what about sports? Do you follow in the footy?
Footy, I'm a diehard Bombers supporter. I think I've probably been to about 5 full games in the last 5 years. So still plugging away there at the Bombers. Avid Liverpool supporter, so we're doing well. So
top of the table at the moment.
Top of the table. It was a good week the other week. We had a bye. Obviously, it was a bye week, so that was fantastic to see the other team sort of drop some points, and we picked up.
Yeah.
A Ravens fan, and unfortunately we lost the divisional game this morning to the Steelers, so that's a big loss for us. I love my sport as well. Knicks fan, we're doing well, picking up Cat and a few other players. So
have you been to the US and watched some American sports?
I have. I've been to I watched the Lakers. This was probably about 5 years ago, and they do sports so much different there. Yeah, it's unreal.
It's entertainment at its finest. Fantastic. Yeah, they know how to entertain the Americans, don't they?
Yeah, I'd love to get over there for a gridiron game. So I think that'd be next on the list.
Yeah, I went and watched Buffalo Bills, the opening game this year, and it was incredible atmosphere. Highly recommend it.
Great team as well, Buffalo. They're doing
well, they're playing this morning.
Kansas City.
Yeah, so it's top of the table clash. It's been interesting to see how that plays out.
Can we get a live score chat?
Thanks, Sienna. But anyway, on that note, thank you very much for coming in, Stefan. It's been a pleasure. Stefan Galbo from PKF. It's been a pleasure having you in. We've known each other for, probably 30-odd years. It's a very long time. And it's good to see your career prosper, and you're doing some exceptional things. And thank you. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Fab.
Cheers.
Disclaimer. This podcast exists for informational and entertainment purposes only. The personal opinions of the speaker and guests do not represent the view of any other party. If this recording contains reference to financial products, that reference does not constitute advice nor recommendations and may not be relied upon.